Hello, I'm Bob Weir with another interview of People in the News in North Texas. My guest today is David Johnson, a candidate for place 2 on the Flower Mound Council in the May 2nd election. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate being here.
Now, you asked if you could address certain topics that you think are very important. So let's begin with the topic you referred to as the budget debacle and canceled projects.
Yes. Well, Bob, and the September budget process here in Flower Mound was not a good example of how our council should be interacting with our staff and our employees, and they did a horrible job of representing our elected officials. They ended up doing a lot with the budget process and insulting our town executives with the town manager, our police chiefs, trying to one-up them on the budget process, and it just broke down to the point that the night that I announced for council, we had burgundy T-shirts rounding the room with our police officers and our firefighters. We're making a statement against council's harsh judgment about the pay raises and things that were in the budget. There would have been a much better way to handle that. Those questions should have come up behind the scenes. And the council members should have done a much better job of educating themselves of how the budget worked.
Next, you asked to talk about the council's unwillingness to work with developers to benefit Flower Mound.
We have a lot of projects that have great potential here in Flower Mound. And instead of our current council coming to the table, having a conversation with developers, talking about what their needs are, and looking for advantages the town might have, if it's additional parkland, additional facilities, those types of things. Instead, our council wants to simply close the door. They don't want to talk about density. They don't want to talk about multifamily. And it's end up hurting the town in the long run. The area around us is going to grow. The state demographer shows that Denton County is going to grow faster in this next 10 years than they did in the last 10 years. So that growth is coming. The traffic is coming. If Flower Mound builds one more house or 0 more houses, the area is going to continue to grow around us. We need to have council people and staff that are empowered to have a seat at the table and have serious discussions with developers as those projects come before us, so Flower Mound can be sure to take advantage of what's happening around us.
Okay, the third and final topic you suggested is council's overall lack of strategic vision. What do you mean by that?
Well, several things happened in the past few months. For example, some of the projects that were canceled in the budget were the bridge out at Denton Creek Bridge out west. That bridge was a kind of an expensive project, but it would have opened up that furthest west part of Flower Mound where 35W is. The state will be spending billions of dollars over the next several years to widen 35W, adding lanes, adding frontage roads, and that bridge would have given Flower Mound the leap as far as what it would look like to have more east-west transportation options on that part of town. And they decided that they didn't want to spend that kind of money. They didn't want to go into debt. There are other projects. They had an opportunity to enhance a path that was a town path that was going to come down through Magnolia Court late last year, and the developer came forward, had a beautiful plan. They were going to put in a nice amenity area that was going to connect to the town trail system, and it was $130,000. They couldn't wrap their head around why that made sense. This project is right across the street from the CAC. It would have been made perfect sense to have an enhanced park area right there at the entrance, one of the entrances to Flower Mound there by the CAC. They couldn't wrap their head around it. So instead, we will get the path, but we're just going to have flat grass and with irrigation. There won't be any park-like setting. There won't be any mounding to break up the topography, and it's just going to be a plain walk path. When for $130,000, they could have had a nice enhancement right across the street from the CAC.
All right, let me ask you on another topic that people often talk about and complain about, and that's the traffic jams in town. Is there anything that the council can do about that?
The council has limited authority over exactly what happens with state roads. That's mostly TxDOT. But there are other resources around. For example, Denton County has a regional transportation authority. To the best of my knowledge, council has had no conversations about what it might look like to work with them. Although we are not members of the Denton County Transportation Authority, they are doing contract services and allowing shuttles into communities on an ad hoc contract basis. For example, the city of Louisville just expanded their services for seniors. The seniors in Louisville now have shuttle services into Flower Mound for medical appointments. You know, those types of things can be addressed, have conversations about them, and possibly alleviate some of our traffic concerns. The other issue is when the state expanded 2499 north all the way to Denton, they know they could design that road to the capacity of 100,000 cars a day. It's somewhere between 70 to 75,000 cars a day. That growth, that traffic is coming, and so Flower Mound has got to have town council and empowered staff that can have a seat at the table, work with TxDOT, work with the county, work with our neighboring communities, understand what the traffic growth is going to look like, and make sure that our concerns are addressed.
All right, anyone who's resided in Flower Mound for the last 10 or 20 years has seen an enormous amount of growth. So do you think the quality of life has changed in, let's say, the last decade or so?
Well, I've been here for 25 years, and I'll go so far as to say I think our quality of life has actually improved, especially in the last 10 years. We have a wider variety of housing options available. We have a wider variety of restaurants and shopping available. We have better options for transportation. 1171 is now 6 lanes all the way out to 35W. There's all types of improvements going on around us, and that's why people continue to want to move here. That's why our house prices continue to increase in value.
All right, the TERS, the tax increment reinvestment zone, was rejected by the council for Lakeside. Did you agree with that?
Well, at the time the TERS was coming on, Bob, I'll admit, since I wasn't a voting member at the time, my knowledge of how the TERS worked and how those pieces all fit together wasn't very detailed. But I do believe it was a mistake. I think the council is now feeling the effects of that mistake. Just here recently, since I'm the chairman of Planning and Zoning, the developer has come forward and had to ask for some modifications on drainage and parking, some things that would not have been needed if the TERS would have come through and additional funding sources would have been available for the infrastructure. Just a few weeks ago, council was faced with having to make some decisions, some modifications on surface parking, for example, because the funding wasn't there for the parking structures. So we will feel the impact of not having deeper consideration for that TERS for years to come, and I believe long-term it was a mistake.
How about the tower at Lakeside? Do you think that'll ever be finished?
Certainly it'll be finished, Bob. The thing that's interesting, I had a conversation with one of the inspectors not long ago. The thing that most folks are failing to understand is some of those towers, especially the upper floors, are very high-end clientele. Millions of dollars have been purchased those penthouses, and some of those have required major redesign. Folks that are at that end of the real estate market are very detailed about how they want their floor plans done. So there's been some major redesign have done, some movement of bathrooms and things have been done on some of those, which you can imagine affects the lower floors. So the things that we see as the average Joe driving by that are impacting the completion of that building are things that we just aren't aware of, but it'll get done.
Okay, just quickly, because we're running out of time, how's the Riverwalk doing? Any business openings?
Well, the Riverwalk is, as we all know, has been moving very slow. The restaurants are inching along, and we're hoping that those can come along. There's a new hotel that's broken ground that'll be built there. And honestly, one of the things I'm hoping to have a conversation about is to see if there is a fine arts center that we can have a conversation with that developer about putting the fine arts center there. We've got to have people sit with a seat at the table, willing to have these deep conversations to help the town.
I agree. What about your campaign? Do you have a website, or is it a Facebook page?
I have a Facebook page, Johnson for FM, and David Johnson for Flower Mound Town Council.
All right, and just as an election note, I'll be moderating the Flower Mound Campaign Forum, sponsored by the Cross Timbers Gazette. That'll be at 7 p.m. on Thursday, April 14th at Town Hall. Dave, is there anything you'd like to add before we close?
I just appreciate the chance to visit with you, Bob, and to reach out to the community, and I hope everybody gets out and votes. Your vote is never more important than in a local election. Thank you.
That's right, and that'll be on May 2nd. So I want to thank you, Dave, for being here.
Thank you.
And just because everybody's so concerned about the virus and germs, let's just do a
Right.
fist bump.
Thanks,
Okay,
Bob.
thanks for being
All
here.
right, appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you for watching.